Good morning. My name is Leslie Schultz. I'm the president of BRIC, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to BRIC Arts Media House in the booming, vibrant Brooklyn Cultural District. We're especially delighted to welcome so many esteemed elected and government officials today, including Senator Jesse Hamilton, Assemblyman Joe Lenthal, Assemblywoman Joanne Simon, Kenneth Adams, Commissioner of New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, Darrell Towns, a dear friend, Commissioner and CEO of the New York State Homes and Community Renewal Department, Fran Barrett, New York State Interagency Not-for-Profit Coordinator, and Councilmember Lori Cumbo. And I hope I didn't miss anybody. We're very excited to be hosting this event, and I thank you all for joining us to learn more about Governor Andrew Cuomo's Opportunity Agenda. The governor first outlined his Opportunity Agenda last month in Albany, but today we're going to get a special presentation of what that agenda means for Brooklyn and communities like ours throughout New York City. Governor, as always, we appreciate your continued support of community-serving institutions like BRIC, and we look forward to hearing more about your agenda for the coming year. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our Assemblyperson, Walter Mosley.
Thank you, Leslie. Is Brooklyn in the house? Is Brooklyn in the house? All right, because I look at this audience and I see Brooklyn. I got a little bit of Manhattan here. Someone let them in. But when I look at this audience, I see Brooklyn. The Brooklyn that I grew up in, the Brooklyn that I raised my family and my young son and my younger daughter. And I'm so proud to be a part of such a thriving and just a metropolis that's built upon just the diversity that is a fabric of our nation and a reflection of our state. But I have a job to do here today, and in D.C., we have a man who we've elected in the great 8th Congressional District, someone who is not only my colleague in government, but a dear friend, someone who has stood up and stood out, more importantly, and has been a leader amongst leaders, someone who defends our homeland while defending those who want to strike out against our president, and someone who I can count on when I need him in times of need and tribulation as we deal with issues up in Albany. He's our friend, he's your friend, he's someone I will always lean on, whether it be good times or bad times. He's your congressman, he's the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here, and so thankful for that introduction from my good friend, Assemblyman Mosley. He's doing a great job. He replaced me in the Assembly. My only concern is I keep telling him, stop showing up looking better than the congressman. But I'm so pleased with the work that he's doing. To all of my other colleagues in government, it's great to see so many folks here today on such a cold, bitterly cold winter morning. It's the type of weather that when I was growing up here in Brooklyn, my grandfather used to say, the hawk is out. I never knew what the hawk was, but I figured it out this morning. I'm so thankful that you're here today. I've got the great honor of introducing a very distinguished and special guest. I had the opportunity to work closely with our governor during the time that I spent in the New York State Legislature, and I saw firsthand the good that he has done. During his first term, he worked hard to increase New York State's minimum wage, making it one of the highest in the nation. He stood up for the civil rights of every community, resulting in the historic passage of marriage equality here in New York State. He presided over 4 consecutive on-time budgets, unheard of in New York State, budgets that contained tax relief for working families and for middle-class New Yorkers. He presided over the creation of a tenant protection unit so that working families and others throughout a gentrifying New York could be better protected and allowed to stay in their homes. He worked hard for us during his first term, but he's just getting started. As you'll hear him lay out today, he's got a bold agenda to continue to move New York State forward. He's going to push the DREAM Act into law so that the sons and daughters of immigrant families can better pursue the American dream here in New York. He's a strong supporter of early childhood education. He recognizes that we've got to get our children off to a great start in life. He believes in tax relief for small businesses, which are the engine that drives our economy here in New York State and the economy all across the country. And he's committed to criminal justice reform. He recognizes that we've got to provide equal protection under the law for everyone, strengthen the relationship between the police and the community, and stop treating 16 and 17-year-olds as adults. He's going to end that once and for all here in New York State. And so, he's a good man, he's a family man, he's an intelligent man, he's a hardworking man, he's a man of action, he's the right man for the job. I present to you the governor of the great state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, good morning to all of you. Thank Brick for letting us be here today. What a beautiful place this is, huh? And what a beautiful story Brick is. You know, it's the story of community development. It's the story of when you have a vision and you keep working and you keep going, you can get it done no matter how difficult the obstacles. This did not happen overnight. This happened because a lot of people worked very hard for a long time, and it is a beautiful, beautiful facility that's doing great work. And let's give Leslie Schultz a round of applause for her leadership. Your Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, I am a big fan of his. He's a great success. But it's easy to be a great success when you're handsome, you're young, and you're smart. Guys like me, we have to work hard, but for Hakeem, it comes easy. Hakeem, I once was chatting with my father about Hakeem Jeffries. My father was very impressed with the congressman. And we lost my father just over a month ago, so I've been thinking a lot about the conversations that I had with him, wishing that I had more, wishing that I had spent more time and prioritized that even more. And looking back how smart he was about so many things. But we were chatting about Hakeem, and he made the point that he respected the way the congressman did business, because politicians, there's a tension for a politician. Politicians often are in the business to try to make friends. You're in politics, and you want people to like you, and you want to make friends. But you're also in politics because you want to make change, and you want to get things done. And that requires you sometimes to challenge the status quo, and it's a difficult balance. You want to make people happy, you want to make friends, you want people to like you, but you're there to make change, and sometimes to make change you have to ruffle feathers, and sometimes you have to break some eggs to make an omelet. And how do you handle that balance? And you get too timid, and you wind up making no change, and then you really failed in the fundamental purpose of the business. You push too hard, you offend too many people, then you're not in the business anymore, so you don't have the opportunity. So finding the right balance. And Hakeem is that balance. He's got a beautiful way about him personally, and a sincere motivation that comes through, and understanding, and he listens, but he's going to make this place a better place. And that's why he is where he is, not just to get reelected and not just because he wants to be a politician. And that's what makes him special. He's found that balance. And my father loved you, and my father had good taste. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. I'll tell you, Brooklyn just makes a lot of great political talent. You know, you really have a whole crew of great politicians that are coming up in Brooklyn. Assemblyman Mosley is at the top of the class. Young people who really care and are here to make a difference, and Joanne Simon, Joe Lenthal, who has just been fantastic, and I can go on and on. But really a great delegation, and they work together for the good of the borough, which really makes a difference. They work as a team, and let's give them all a round of applause. One point to the congressman gets up and says it's cold. Now, cold is a relative concept, I want you to know. It's cold in Brooklyn. I'll tell you cold. Cold was yesterday. Cold was yesterday. I was on the Tug Hill Plateau, upstate New York, snowmobiling. We land, it's minus 13, okay? That's without the wind chill factor. With the wind chill factor, it goes down to like 40 below zero. That, my friends, is cold. Now, if this is the hawk, that is the eagle. I don't know what that is, but it was really cold. But it was beautiful, and we were there to promote upstate New York and promote snowmobiling. So if you are thinking of any vacation, any long weekend, there is no reason to leave the state of New York for anything. You go upstate, you can ski, you can snowmobile. You have everything that you can do in this one state. But I agree, it's shades of cold. What I want to talk to you about today is the plan that we outlined for the state of New York. We put together what's called the State of the State, which is the overall vision for the state, and then a state budget, which is a very specific action plan. And I talked to the legislature about it in Albany, but more important, I want to talk to you about it, because the way we get things done is by getting people involved, right? Because democracy still works, and that's what today is all about. As the congressman said, we've had a great 4 years in this state. We've made great progress. You can look at almost any index on any level, and you'll see that we've made progress. Unemployment is down all across the state, and if people are working, that's the single best thing we can probably do as government. Credit ratings in the state were at one of the all-time low points, and then now at one of the all-time high points. Upstate New York was in decay. Upstate New York is now rebuilding, which makes a difference to the entire state. Taxes kept going up in New York. Taxes and spending are now at the lowest rate in 50 years. Property taxes were going up. Property taxes are now frozen. Every newspaper, every editorial board, to the extent they agree on anything, they'll all say that we've made great progress and we're moving forward. And what we're trying to do is bring opportunity back to New York, because that's what it's really all about. Question for us, challenge for us, is how do you now take that progress and take it to the next level, right? And how do you build on it? And that's what this year's plan is all about: economic opportunity, education, fairness for all, and ethics. First, on economics, single best thing we can do is get that economy running. Create jobs. If there are jobs at the end of the rainbow, people can see a vision, they can see a career path, they know there's a reason to go to school and graduate and stay in New York. We created 500,000 jobs over the past 4 years. This state is number 2 in job creation in the nation since the recession. And our challenge is now to keep that going. And one of the ways we do that is by lowering taxes. Why? People say, I have to leave New York because it's the highest tax state in the nation. People are mobile. If you have the highest taxes in the country, people will leave. And they were doing that to us. So reducing taxes is key. We cut taxes for the middle class, who find it hardest to live in New York. Lowest middle-class tax rate since 1953, which is so long ago, I wasn't even born. That's how long ago 1953 is. Lowest corporate tax since 1968, lowest manufacturer's tax since 1917. This year, we want to cut taxes on small business. Why? That's where the jobs are coming from, small business. And we want them to stay here. And we want to take this small business tax from 6.5% down to 2.5%, which would be the lowest tax rate in over 100 years. Growing economy is about keeping the infrastructure growing and keeping the infrastructure up to date. We want to focus on rebuilding our airports. They are shameful, frankly. Vice President Biden, who has the ability to be candid every once in a while, gets himself into a little bit of trouble because, you know, candor is nice, but you got to be careful with it. He flew into LaGuardia Airport, and he said after flying into LaGuardia that you would have thought you were flying into a third world country landing in LaGuardia. Took a little bit of offense, but he's a nice guy overall. But the point is right. LaGuardia Airport, JFK Airport, they have been under construction, I think, as long as I have been alive. I remember going there as a kid, and they were under construction. You go back, they are still under construction, you know, with those little signs, sorry for the delay, under construction. Yeah, but it's been 50 years, you know. At one point, sorry doesn't work. And I think about the 50-year point is about that. Let's rebuild the airports. You fly into any airport across the globe now, and these are totally different experiences. And they welcome you, and they're commercial centers, and they're clean, and they're bright, and they're a pleasure to fly into. We have to rebuild LaGuardia. We have to rebuild JFK. We have to get it done. We have to get it done fast. We also have regional airports out on Long Island, in the Mid-Hudson. We have to get them all done and connected. We also have to have a train to LaGuardia. It makes no sense that you have to get in a cab and drive to LaGuardia. They've been talking about it for decades. We want to get it done. Also, when you're talking about economic recovery, it's great that the economy is coming back and we're creating jobs. We want to make sure the economy works for everyone across the entire income spectrum, not just for those at the top. And that's about raising the minimum wage. And as the congressman said, we just raised the minimum wage in 2012, and we were proud of that. And that made things better, but that did not make things good enough, because the minimum wage is supposed to pay enough where if you work a full-time job at the minimum wage, you can live decently and keep yourself out of poverty. That is not true today with the minimum wage. We have to raise it again. We want to raise it to $10.50 statewide and $11.50 in the city of New York to handle the differential. We have New Yorkers who literally are going hungry because there is a shadow to this great economic success. We want to increase the food pantries with $4.5 million. We have an affordable housing crisis in this city. It's getting worse, not better. The economy's doing great. There's gentrification in neighborhoods, and the first thing to go is affordable housing. If you're not building and increasing the supply of affordable housing, you're losing it. We committed $1 billion last year to affordable housing, which was one of the largest investments ever. This year, we want to add to that, which we're still spending $486 million more for affordable housing to do that, especially in the city of New York, where it is a crisis. The other crisis we have is an unemployment issue. You look at the unemployment numbers, there is an unemployment crisis, especially among young people, especially among minority young people, especially among minority males. It has been an employment crisis for years. Last year, we tried something different, which is a job voucher, we call it, which is a subsidy that goes to a private company that hires a minority male, 16 to 24, hires them full-time, and gives them job training. We subsidize the wage and the training. It worked phenomenally well. We hired 20,000 young people. We want to double that and hire 40,000 young people with the state job voucher this year. Because if you're employing young people, they're off the corner, they're out of the neighborhood, they're on a progressive path. We want to do that. The best way to help people, especially in the minority community, with economic development is something called the MWBE program. Willie Sutton was asked, why do you rob banks? Willie Sutton said, that's where the money is, right? Where the money is in helping people who are unemployed or underemployed is the Minority and Women Business Enterprise Program. It is hundreds of millions of dollars. It is now billions of dollars dedicated to minority contractors and women-owned business contractors. When you employ these companies, you're then building an entire infrastructure, and you're building their private payrolls. So they're doing training, et cetera, bringing people in. 2010, when we started, 4 years ago, there was 10% of the state contracts were set aside for minority contracts and women-owned contracts. We raised that to 20%, which was $1.6 billion. We then raised that to 25%, which was $2 billion. We now want to raise it to 30%, which is the highest amount in the United States of America, $2.4 billion in contracts for minority contractors and women-owned contractors. That's how you make a difference. You put your money where your mouth is. You're serious about doing that, that's a real investment. And the best way to rebuild the community is from within the community. That's what community development is all about, using the not-for-profits, using the community-based organizations, using faith-based organizations that often are the rock in a community. We want to invest $50 million in that and start an office of faith-based community development services. And we have a great person who's going to lead it, great Assemblyman and Pastor Karim Kamara, who's going to be leaving the Assembly and who's going to be joining our administration to run this program. And let's give him a round of applause. We have a very robust education program. We all talk about education. Education is the key. It's about our children. Every politician gets up and gives the speech, right? The question is, what are you doing about it? And we actually want to do something about it over the next couple of years because we need dramatic reform. We want to recruit the best teachers, close failing schools, and invest in early education. To recruit the best teachers, our plan is very simple, on the put your money where your mouth is problem. If you give us 5 years as a New York State public school teacher, we will pay for your college tuition, period. We'll pay for your college tuition if you give us 5 years as a public school teacher. You want to get the best and the brightest, offer them an incentive. Number 2, we want to have what's called a real teacher evaluation system. And once we have a real teacher evaluation system, have a bonus for the high-performing teachers, help those teachers who are in the middle who are struggling, and remove bad teachers from the classroom. But we have to have a real teacher evaluation system. The nation has moved to these teacher evaluation systems. It's the #1 education reform. Almost every state is doing it. It's just starting. We just started the past couple of years in New York having a teacher evaluation system. The problem is our teacher evaluation system is not accurate enough, and it's skewed towards the teachers. Why? 98% of the high school teachers are rated effective, but only 38% of the students are college ready. You can't have 98% of the teachers doing an effective job when only 38% of the high school students are college ready. That would mean you have a problem with your students, and your students are really not up to average and not up to par, and your students can't be educated. That's not true. It is a mismatch in the credibility of the evaluation system. 3rd to 8th graders proficient in English, only 30%, but 99% of the teachers are rated effective. How can that be? 3rd to 8th graders proficient in math, 35%, but 98% of the math teachers, they're doing great. We need a real, fair evaluation system that accurately measures the teacher's performance and is right and is fair for everyone. I want the teachers to have a fair evaluation system. I want the students to have a fair evaluation system. And then once we have that fair evaluation system, We want teachers to work hard. You know how you do that? Incentivize performance. And what we've said is top-performing teachers, we'll give them a $20,000 bonus paid for by the state on top of whatever their salary is. You want a teacher to work hard? Give them a $20,000 bonus and let them work hard. For the teachers who are in the middle, who need help, we will give them unprecedented support services to increase their performance because we want them to be high-performing teachers. But for a teacher who is failing and who receives the support service and is still failing and receives more support service and is still failing and receives more support service and is still failing, after 3 years of being ineffective, we want to remove the teacher from the classroom. That's our teacher evaluation system. Right now, it is so hard to remove a teacher from the classroom that they don't even try. It's called the 30-28 process. They don't even try. They'll take the teacher out of one classroom, put the teacher in another classroom, put the teacher in another classroom, but it's too hard to fire a bad teacher. Now, the teachers union says, I don't like teachers. And that's why I'm putting in this system and the failing teachers. I love teachers. My mother was a public school teacher. My mother now does mentoring. She's a natural teacher. And it's one of the greatest occupations and best way to spend your life. I love teachers. And our plan shows that we love teachers. We're doing more for teachers than ever before. Nobody's ever offered a full scholarship for teachers before. Nobody ever offered a $20,000 bonus. Nobody ever offered more support services than ever for teachers. And 3 years for ineffective ratings before any action is taken. I've never heard anybody in any job that gets to fail for 3 years before anyone says anything. You know, you could argue this the other way, that I'm being too generous to teachers, which somebody actually said to me yesterday. An assemblyman came up and said, why are you giving them 3 years of failure? I never heard of such a thing. But we're trying to be open-minded and work with them. And we're going to have the largest budget investment in history in education. So you couldn't have a plan that is more supportive of teachers. But we have to remember, the education system is not about the teachers. The education system is about the students. That's the point of the process. We fund education because we want to help students. This was not about hiring teachers, and it was not about building a bureaucracy with bus drivers and school teachers and maintenance officials. It was about helping the student. And the elected officials are there to help the student, not to take care of the teachers' union and not to take care of the bureaucracy. Second, we have to do something about the chronically failing schools. Chronically failing schools are schools where half the graduates actually graduate. 9 out of 10 students in failing schools are minority or poor. 9 out of 10 are minority or poor. And you have to ask yourself, if those were rich students, or they were powerful students, or they were connected students, would you still have this crisis of failing schools? Would we have allowed the failing schools to go on as long as they have if they were a different population? We have 178 failing schools in the state of New York. There are 25 in Brooklyn. Of the 25 schools, 15 have been failing for 4 years. Okay? Of the 25 schools, this is the second half of the 15, 4 years. And you can see they're all across the borough. 10 schools have been failing for a decade. What does that mean? That means that over the last 10 years, statewide, 250,000 children, 40,000 children in Brooklyn went through these failing schools. 10 years. You knew the school was failing, and you continued to send students there for 10 years. knowing that the students you sent were basically being condemned to have an inferior education. You want to talk about government incompetence and a government scandal? To me, that's a government scandal. Everyone gets up and says it's about our children, it's about our education. And then for 10 years, we did nothing on the failing schools. 40,000 kids. We're not talking about a little problem. We're talking about a fundamental breach of the social contract. Today, as we sit here, just under 10,000 students are in failing schools. 10,000. Where you know less than half are going to graduate. And you know if you fail in elementary school, then you don't get into the right high school. You fail in high school, you don't get into the right college, you're going to have an entirely different trajectory for your life. That's why education is so important. You get left behind early on, you never catch up. This has to be fixed, and this has to be fixed now, because it is a scandal of the highest proportions, and it is totally in our control to make a difference. I say when a school fails, if it fails for 3 years, do something different. Why? Because insanity is doing the same thing over and over. Bring in a not-for-profit, bring in another school district, bring around a turnaround expert, but do something different with that school. They implemented this in the state of Massachusetts. Graduation rates went up from 52 to 67. Math proficiency increased. The dropout rate decreased by 50%. And it's a different management with a different approach. We have the resources, get the services in those schools, but do something different. It was also supported by the teachers union in Massachusetts. So if they supported it in Massachusetts, we should say to the teachers union, support it here in the state of New York, because we can't keep doing what we've been doing, and we're not going to do it. Finally, in education, invest in early education. We're still working through putting in statewide universal pre-K for 4-year-olds. We also want to begin universal pre-K for 3-year-olds, because every study says the younger you get them into the classroom, the more brain power. We would be the first state in the country to have universal pre-K for 3-year-olds, and you want to talk about giving our young people a head start, that is exactly how you do it. And as the congressman said, we support the DREAM Act and what's called the education tax credit to get everyone into the education system and give everyone opportunity. And DREAM Act is the children of immigrants. That's the promise of this state. It's the promise of this country. We want to make it a reality. We also propose extending mayoral control in New York State. We think it's working well, and we want to continue it. It's a bold reform agenda. I said to the legislature, if they get this done, I will support a 4.8% increase, which is 3 times the scheduled amount, because with the right funding and with this approach, we can transform education in 1 year and make a real difference. Third piece of the agenda is what we call our social justice agenda. Raise the age, restoring confidence, and adopting a sexual assault policy, and providing more assistance to our homeless. New York is one of only 2 states in the country that have a criminal responsibility for a 16-year-old, which means if a 16-year-old is convicted in New York, they're tried as an adult, they go to a state prison. To be a 16-year-old in a state prison, let me just say, no good is going to come of that situation. We want to raise the age of criminal responsibility to 18 and treat 16 and 17-year-olds like the juveniles they are, and try to turn their life around before we condemn them by putting them into a state prison. We have a crisis that we lived through here in New York with the Eric Garner case several weeks ago. It's not unique to New York. It's Ferguson, Missouri. It's Los Angeles. But there is no doubt both in perception and reality, that the criminal justice system has lost confidence of the community. And if you don't have trust and you don't have respect for the police and the community, and if it doesn't work both ways, then you have a problem. And my friends, we have a problem. Now you can say, well, the Eric Garner case, that's over. It's not over. It will happen again. These things recur if you do not solve them. And just because it's not on the front page of the newspaper today doesn't mean it's gone away. And that lack of trust and that lack of respect and that lack of confidence is still there. Do something about it now. And we have a 7-point agenda that does just that. We want a statewide reconciliation commission to get the community and police talking in a way they don't do now. We want to recruit more minorities into the police forces. The more the police force looks like the community they serve, the better. We want to provide race and ethnic data on all police actions statewide. So if we think there's targeting, we have the data that shows it one way or the other. We want to make sure the police have the protection that they need because they deserve it. We say on the grand jury report, district attorneys may issue a grand jury report or a letter of fact explaining what actually happened if there's no indictment, no true bill after a grand jury like the Eric Garner case. And I want to have the power to appoint an independent monitor in cases where there is controversy after the grand jury, so someone independent can come in and actually take a look. I want the independent monitor to have access to the grand jury information, and the independent monitor will then report to me, and if justice was not done, I'll appoint a second prosecutor to retry that case, because people have to know that there's checks and balances in the criminal justice system, and I want to get that passed this year with your help. The proposal is supported by DAs, by the NAACP, by Harry Belafonte, Jay-Z, Russell Simmons, a lot of the activist groups, New York Civil Liberties Union, the Justice League, all of them, as a program that can actually help restore confidence and get people talking in a productive way. An issue that hasn't gotten enough attention, in my opinion, if Eric Garner got a lot of attention, a situation that didn't get the attention it deserves, is sexual assault of young women on college campuses. New York State now has more college campuses being investigated than any other state in the country for sexual assault. And it's just wrong. We started a policy in our state schools that said two things. We did this last year. Number one, what's called affirmative consent to sexual relations. Both parties must affirmatively consent to sexual relations. And second, if a woman believes she was the victim of a sexual assault, she has a right to speak to law enforcement personnel. Now, you might say, well, of course she does. Not necessarily. The campuses try to handle it as an internal matter. Why? Because they don't want the publicity. And they don't want it in the newspaper because it's bad for the school. So they handle it as an academic matter, and the campus security investigates it, and it goes to a panel of professors, and then the panel of professors decide what to do. And the panel of professors very often comes back and says, well, there's two stories. He says this, she says this. And the issue gets swept under the carpet. This is not an academic matter. If a woman was raped, that is a crime. And it shouldn't be handled by the schools in a way that keeps it a secret. The woman did nothing wrong. The woman was a victim. The police should be called in. If the man committed a crime, then treat it as a crime and punish the man. What is happening is the assaults are going up through the roof. It's a very small number of men. But the recidivism is very high. Why? Because they're not being stopped the first time. So they're doing it the second time and the third time and the fourth time. The woman has a right to go to the police, local police, state police. The police have a right to do a thorough investigation. If it causes bad publicity for the campus, I'm sorry, but the woman shouldn't be treated like a guilty party, and that's what this law does. We passed this law in New York. I guarantee you this law will go all across the country. Because when New York does something, the rest of the country notices. We passed gay marriage, the rest of the country notices. We passed gun control, the rest of the country noticed. We stand up and say, we're going to protect our women. They did nothing wrong. If they're raped, we're going to prosecute the individual. This law is going to go right across the country because there's no alternative but to justice. When I was in my 20s, I started working on the homeless with a group called HELP. We built our first couple of transitional housing shelters out in the 7-5 precinct off Pennsylvania Avenue. And it was a temporary situation, homelessness. It was going to be gone in a year or two. That was the whole theory that was operating. That we had families in welfare hotels and we were going to get transitional housing and get them on their way, and then it was gone. It's not gone. It's 30 years later. It's worse than it has ever been before. And we've almost gotten to the headset where this is part of life. This is not part of life where we have people sleeping on the streets. It's not part of New York. It's not part of who we are. It's not part of our view of society to allow people to sleep on streets and have children sleeping in intake centers in homeless facilities. We want to increase the homeless budget, another $400 million. We have to get ahead of this once and for all, produce the affordable housing stock so we have a place for people to go, and have a homeless service center that treats them with the respect and dignity that we want to treat all of our brothers and sisters in New York. And that takes money, and we're, again, going to put our money where our mouth is, $400 million, which is a 20% increase. Last point. I am very proud of what we've done over the past 4 years. The assemblyman should be, the senator should be, because we turned the state government around. It was just dysfunctional 4 years ago. The passing 4 budgets on a row, marriage equality, gun control, all we've done, that's just showing the government is working again. And I'm proud of that. But there's been a shadow to all of this, which is every few weeks you read about another scandal in Albany. And you read about another person getting into trouble in Albany. And they're two wholly disconnected concepts. How can you say the government's working better, and then every couple of weeks I read about another guy getting jammed up and in trouble and stupid, and U.S. attorneys and district attorneys? I thought it was working better. And it is a shame. Bad apples spoil the barrel. It's not reflective of all of the assembly. It's not reflective of all of the Senate. But a couple of bad actors can actually then hurt everyone. And that is exactly what has happened. And then you get a high-profile actor, the leader, and they say, well, it must be all of them if it was the leader. It has to end, and it has to end once and for all. Because if people don't trust the government is then incapacitated. Because you need that relationship to work, and any relationship is about trust. You want the Congress of the United States to work, people have to feel that you can trust the Congress. We need to feel that we can trust the state government. And if you trust the state government, you're willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, and you believe in them, then it's going to actually increase the ability for the government to do good things. We have to handle ethics reform, and we have to handle it once and for all. It can't be an ongoing conversation. The dramatic ethics reform that actually addresses the problem will inure to everyone's benefit. If I'm an assemblyman, I want to know the rules of the game so a prosecutor's not going to knock on my door. I do. I want to know what I need to do to be safe. And I want to follow those rules. And we put on the table a plan that once and for all, I believe, resolves the issues. It's the strongest campaign finance disclosure. It's pension forfeiture for legislators who commit felonies. Reduce the per diem so people can't make money on per diems. They just get reimbursed. Stop using campaigns for personal expenses, and what I call ultimate disclosure. Ultimate disclosure is this. These scandals go back 50 years. I remember as a kid the same stories. And the situation they normally come up in is this. You have a part-time legislator who's also a lawyer. And the part-time legislator represents the people of the district, but then puts on his or her lawyer hat and represents clients. And the question has always been, who are the clients, and do the clients pose a conflict of interest? And are the clients paying you to represent them in a way that compromises your public service? And the clients have always been secret. And when you see these cases break through, it's always the same. We found out who the clients were. And the clients were actually paying the assemblyman or the senator to deliver a certain vote on a bill, to deliver access, et cetera. And then that's the court case, and that's the prosecutor's case. That does not end until one of two things happens. Either you say, no outside income, no outside clients, you're a 100% full-time legislator and we'll raise the pay. That's option A. Nobody wants to do option A. Okay, I have an option B. Option B, part-time legislator, and you can represent clients on the outside, but you have to tell us who the clients are once and for all, because unless we know who the clients are, we're not going to take your word for it anymore that you can be trusted. We've had too many experiences where you can't be trusted. If you're not ashamed and you're not hiding, tell us who your clients are so the people can make a determination whether you're worthy of their trust or not. That's the legal standard. It's also the ethical standard. And I said it to the legislature directly. And if they are unwilling to tell us who their clients are, now you have me nervous, and now you have me suspicious. Because with all that's going on, and all these prosecutors looking at everything, if you are unwilling to disclose your clients, first of all, it's foolhardy because they're going to get to you sooner or later, and you can either open it up and put it on a disclosure, or you can answer it in a subpoena, but they're going to wind up answering it one way or the other. And if they have a problem disclosing it, they're telling you something by the resistance to disclose. I want to get a budget done on time, but I said to the legislature, this is the single most important thing we have to get done. Because we're doing great functionally and operationally, but we have to get the ethics piece done. We get this plan passed. Look what we will have done. We will have lowered taxes for small businesses, created more jobs, transformed the education system in a way that hasn't been done in modern political history. We will have stopped these shameful failing schools from going forward year after year. We'll get better teachers in the classroom. We'll incentivize high-performing teachers. New York will be safer and fairer. We'll pass the sexual assault law. And government will be more trustworthy when we handle the ethics and the disclosure. But there is a lot of change in this proposal. And as I mentioned, what my father used to talk about, change is hard. First of all, change is hard in life, right? Change is hard personally for an individual. And we don't really like change. Husband and wife sitting at the breakfast table. One says to the other, you know, honey, we need change. We need to make some changes. Yeah, they mean you need to make some changes. You're the problem. They're doing fine. They're up close to perfection. You have a long way to go. We want to keep doing what we're doing. Change is hard. This is a lot of change. And this is a lot of change system-wide. And this is ruffling a lot of feathers from a lot of powerful interests. Teachers Union, largest political donor in the state of New York. Teachers Union. Democrats, Republicans, short people, tall people, they don't discriminate. I'll say one thing about them. They give money to everybody. Largest political donors. Well, go take on the Teachers Union. No, they're the largest political donors. It's hard. Transform the ethics rules, but then the lawyers in our conference are going to get upset. And it's easy just not to make people upset. And making people upset is hard. But you're there to make change. I know. But I also want to get reelected. And I want people to like me. And that's the balance. And I'm asking them to make dramatic change for the people. I am 100% sure we enact this, we will have helped tens of thousands of people and solve problems that we shouldn't have had in the first place and that we've been living with for too long. But the legislature has to pass it. And it's going to be hard. And it's going to be really hard. And I've been talking to them about it, but you know what one voice they listen to more than mine? Your voice. Your voice. Because democracy does work. And it's the hand that pulls the lever or fills in that funny little box in the new voting forms. That's the voice that matters most. And that is your voice. And I need you to speak up, and I need you to get involved, and I need you to say to your legislator, I know this is hard, but this is why I elected you. This is the oath you took. This is why you're doing what you're doing, and this is what I need you to do, and I will be behind you, and I'll have your back, and I don't care about this union or that union or this special interest. If the people are with you, you have ultimate strength, and the people are with this agenda, and the legislature stands up and passes it, you're going to see us take the 4 years of momentum, and we're going to take that momentum to a new level. You think Brooklyn is doing great now. You ain't seen nothing yet. The sky is going to be the limit when we get this done. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Governor Cuomo, for that very inspiring remarks. Thank you for bringing them to Brooklyn. Thanks to all of you for coming out to BRIC today. And that concludes our program.